And now, let's bring in the top economic advisor in the White House, and that would be Larry Kudlow. Larry, great to see you again. Good to see you, sir.
Morning, Stuart. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
I think that this weekend and the following weekend, Memorial Day weekend, they're going to be really big and important indicators for us going back to work, opening the economy, getting the little expansion going again. Do you see it the same way? Because I think this is an absolutely key time for bouncing back.
Well, I agree. Actually, the indicators are pretty good. The infection rates are flattening out. Their growth rates are coming way, way down. So that's a positive. And I think, there's a sense out there, kind of a spirit, culturally, you'd call it a Weltanschauung. People want to come out. They're ready to go. They want to be safe. We want them to be very safe. But I think the spirit of it is, let's get going. And Americans are ready to move. And by the way, we may start seeing some little better economic numbers. There are little glimmers here and there. But we'll face the contraction in the second quarter. We'll face that. That's the virus pandemic contraction. But I agree, at the margin, right in front of us, I do think the country's opening up. I think the country is really listening to President Trump's leadership. And that's an awfully good thing. Let's go. That's what they're saying.
Give me the glimmers. You talked about glimmers, Larry. What we saw this morning was a huge drop in retail sales in April, big drop in industrial production. I don't see a glimmer there. What are your glimmers?
No, I think you're right. Look, the economy is essentially still in free fall because of the shutdown. There's no question about that. And the pandemic contraction in Q2 is going to be very difficult. No question about that. I'm not saying we've turned the corner yet. Unemployment numbers, claims, 36 million. I was just looking, though, continuing claims to a little lighter, lower than people might have thought. And on the claims numbers themselves, the weekly claims, they've been on a pretty steady downtrend for the past, 6-7 weeks. The worst was the first couple of weeks in mid-March, and since then it's gradually come off. There's still bad numbers. There's still heartbreak numbers. Don't get me wrong. There's still hardship numbers. But I'm looking for glimmers at the margin. I noticed one of Wall Street's best economists, Ed Hyman, he runs surveys showing a little bit of improvement in home builders, a little bit improvement in truckers, a little bit improvement in shipping. I'm watching that carefully. He's a brilliant guy and an old friend of mine. You probably know him as well. So, yes, we're still essentially in free fall, but I'm just looking for these glimmers at the margin.
Do we need another rescue, or call it what you will, stimulus package?
Well, Stu, what I think we need, and what the president's been suggesting, although the policies have, we haven't started formal negotiations. Informally, let me just remind everybody, Kevin Hassett and I have been meeting with teleconferences with Democrats and Republicans from the House and from the Senate and the governors and the mayors and so forth. So we've had good conversations. But look, I want to see incentive-oriented torque for this economy. Okay, the CBO and a lot of private forecasters are looking for 20% gain in the second half. I still believe that's a reasonable number. I want to go through that and transition into a huge 2021, which is what the president's been talking about. To do that, Stu, we're not going to spend our way out of that any more than we spent our way out of the Depression, although this is not like the Depression. This is about a virus, not a bad economic policies. But I'm just saying this. Things like payroll taxes to boost take-home pay for workers, things like capital gains taxes, not just for the stock market, by the way, on cap gains, but we've got assets that have fallen 30 or 40%. So suppose you bought one of those poor assets that have sunk, whether it's a factory, a business, an energy company, they're all over the place. Why not get a couple years break on capital gains if you buy it between now and the end of the year? Or, for example, we've learned that the offshoring should be turned into onshoring. We cannot rely as extensively as we have in the past with respect to overseas countries, including China. It still has to be held accountable. So maybe, this is a maybe the corporate tax rate of 21% should be lowered by 50% to about 10.5% for corporations who are coming back home. Maybe that's something to look at. Certainly certainly for businesses at home, I don't care whether you're a large or small business, Stu, if any pandemic-related, COVID-19 related, medical supplies, PPE, testing, you name it, anything they do to restructure the interiors of their companies, that should all be immediately expensed. And we have to make sure, by the way, that the 100% immediate expensing that was passed in 2017 is made permanent. You know, it starts phasing down in 2022. We can't allow that to happen. So regulatory changes. We've got to have regulatory restrictions, liability restrictions for a lot of these restaurants and small businesses.
Isn't that the most important thing, Larry? Liability to protect?
It's one of them.
That's the whole ball of wax here.
Well, look, it's a very key part. These are themes the president has been talking about. These are themes that we are working internally. We have a small economics group working on these proposals for the president to be refined. We're not going to jump in, as everybody said, Secretary Mnuchin, myself, others, we're not going to jump in on a gigantic negotiations right now. We're not going to spend another $3 trillion since we don't know what the last $3 trillion has actually produced. We have to assess that. But when we get around to it, in a few weeks perhaps, we will negotiate. I want to put as many growth incentives into this economy, so not only do we have a V in the second half of the year, but I want a blowout. I want a huge increase in growth next year, and that requires incentives for investors, for workers, for risk takers, for entrepreneurship. That is the American way to do this.
Thank you very much, Larry Kudlow. Great to have you with us again. We love that talk of a blowout 2021, and I can't think of anybody who's not in favor of that. Anyway, Larry, thank you, sir.
Keep the faith.
We appreciate it.
Keep the faith, Stu. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much.